All right. One of the clearest of all of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, when people want to make images, they often take from this particular scroll. Is a running commentary on the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk is one of the Tvei Asar, the Nevi'im, and in this one of the scrolls that were found is basically, it's like what we're used to about a medrash. You have a pasuk, then you have commentary. So here you have the psukim and you have commentary. However, when people looked and learned this particular commentary on Habakkuk, they saw that rather than being like a commentary to explain what the psukim are saying, it's actually translating most of the psukim to current events, saying that this pasuk is referring to an event that's happening now, and it's very partisan in the sense of if there's us, there's them, there's the good guys, there's the bad guys, and these psukim are being interpreted as being part of this particular war. So we'll read from this one passage. On the left side you have the image. It begins on the second line, the third word, where it looks like it says Ches Yud Yud, but that's really Hey Vav Yud. Many of the Vavs and Yuds are hard to see the difference. And if you want, I'll just read it on the right side where I typed it out. So this is a pasuk in Chavakuk that says, Hoi Mashke Re'eyu, woe to the person who gave drink to his friend, Misapeach Chemasoi, Misapeach Chemasoi, who's pouring out his barrel, chemas is different ways of interpreting it, but his fleshel, his bottle of wine, Va'ach Shaker, and also causing drunkenness, Laman Habeit El Moya Dehem. The truth is that we have, by us, it says, if you look in the first footnote, it's L'habit Al Me'oireim, to look at their skin. Okay, this is our pasuk and our Tanakh. So how do we understand this pasuk? The pasuk is understood as a nevuah where we're condemning Nebuchadnezzar. All the Rishonim and all the Mefarshim and the Midrashim explain. Nebuchadnezzar was a superpower. He conquered many kings. What did he do? He brought them all to live by him, and they lived under him in Golos. What did he do when he wanted to make a party and have a good time? He brought them all out. He got them drunk. And what happened when they got drunk? So whatever, and the goal was that they should remove their clothes, and then he'd laugh at them, and then, I don't know, take pictures or whatever it was, and then the next day he'd be able to talk about it and how he abused these subservient kings that he had conquered. And woe to the Russia, Nebuchadnezzar, who is planning on doing such a thing, or who is doing such a thing. This is how the Radak.
What's the time of Habakkuk? Is it in the middle of the Vayishrushin, or?
Habakkuk here, I'm sorry, I don't have the dates for Habakkuk. I don't know. I don't have. But it's in the Kuf of Nevuah, so obviously it's during the period of the end of Vayishrushin. Maybe it's during the Golos. I'm not sure. Yeah, long before this period. Yeah. Oh, could be around the time of Golos. That I don't know. You can check. It shouldn't be. You can check right now on your phone. You'll see the answer to that. So this is what the pasuk is. Now they, instead of having Al Me'oreim to look at their skin, has El Moyadeim to look at their holiday. Okay, and then they have this word Psharoi, and every medrash that they write is always introduced with this word Psharoi as in its interpretation. And they write, what is the interpretation? It's Ala Koyen Arasha. It's talking about an evil Koyen. Asher Rodaf Achar, who chased after the Moira Tzedek, the teacher of righteousness, Levoloi, to swallow him up, Bekas Chamosoi, in the anger of his anger, Epis, that's a play on words on the Chamosoi that you have in the pasuk, Abeis Galusoi, to the house of his Galus. So, look, at the end of the day, everything here is very vague, and a lot of guesswork needs to go into here, but this is what it sounds like. What it sounds like is that you have a good guy. The good guy is named Mr. Moira Tzedek, the teacher of righteousness. You have a bad guy by the name of Koyen Harasha. And the Moira Tzedek, for whatever reason, goes into some sort of galus. He's in some sort of galus, which means he's not in Yerushalayim. He's in some sort of galus. And this Koyen Harasha pursued him and chased him to his place of galus. And he's really a terrible person in order to eat him up, to destroy him. Then the text goes further. Uvekates moyed menuchas yom kippurim, on the time of the time of the rest of Yom Kippur, Hoifia aleim, he appeared to them. We think it means the evil priest appeared. Levalam, to swallow them, V'lsholam, to cause them to trip, B'yom Soim, Shabbos Menuchasam, on the day of the fast and of their rest. Again, very vague, but it sounds like there's some sort of confrontation that happened on Yom Kippur over here. Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and the scroll people are saying that, and they're using this pasuk in Habakkuk, and remember, they instead of Al Me'oirehem, they changed it to Moy Adehem, which means time, because they're connecting this pasuk to some sort of encounter, some sort of debate, some sort of event that happened on Yom Kippur. And the reason they're putting that in over here is because, like, Yom Kippur, that's what you're doing. You have nothing better to do than to come chase us down on Yom Kippur. Shouldn't you be doing your own thing on Yom Kippur? Why are you violating the holiest day of the year? Again, a lot of guesswork here. But working with that, we're going to say, what's the question? The question is Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur for Alaman. It's Yom Kippur for all Jews. So, how could the Kohen HaRasha, who's on the other team, so if you want to say that he's Taka or Rasha, fine. But assuming that only these guys are calling him a Rasha, and he's not such a Rasha, how is it Taka that he's going on a horse, on a wagon, and traveling to a place in Golus to go have an encounter in Yom Kippur? Shouldn't he be busy in Shul, doing Teirah Tefillah and Staka, Tshuva Tefillah, Staka, Mavir, Nesraya, Agzera? So this is an answer to this. We're going to explore, and we'll hopefully come back to toward the end. Okay. We all know that one of the biggest areas, the most famous areas of disputes between Chazal and the Tzedaikim was in the area of Macharas HaShabbat. And that is, when do you start counting the Omer? Really, when do you do Hanafas HaOmer? We do Hanafas HaOmer on the second day of Pesach, and then we count from that day 50 days, and whatever day it is, that day is Hatzeres, that day is Shavuos. The Torah tells us Macharas HaShabbat, and that's how we say it. So here is the psukim that discusses it. This will be the centerpiece for the next few minutes of our discussion. The Torah in Parshas Emor says like this: on the 14th is Pesach. What does that mean? On the 14th you bring the korban Pesach. On the 15th, that's Chag HaMatzos. In Tanakh, generally speaking, Pesach doesn't go on the 7-day holiday. Pesach goes on Yudaled. That's Pesach. Chag HaMatzos is that night and the next 7 days. And then you see that reflected here as well. Okay, then the psukim, and it says, what is the continuation there? What it says over there is that you bring what korbanos you bring. Then it goes right away. It says, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to cut the grain. You're going to bring the first sheaf. You're going to bring it, the first thing that you cut, to the kohen. He lifts it up, and when? What day? So far you don't have a day. Here he tells you the day. On the day after the Shabbos, that's when it should happen. Okay, so what's the Macharas HaShabbos? The clear date isn't given. Then, you count from the day after Shabbos, from the day that you brought the Omer Shava Shabbos Etzmin 7 complete weeks, until another Macharas HaShabbos, Tisbru Chamishim, you're counting 50 days, and that's when is Shavuos, where you bring a Mincha Chadash Al Hashem, you bring another special korban that you do on Shavuos. 3 times in this series of Psukim, you use the term Macharas HaShabbos. If you were looking for a date of the month, for when is Hanafas HaOmer in Parshas Emor, you don't get it. There is no date of the month for when is the Hanafas HaOmer. So what do Chazal say? Macharas HaShabbos here means Shvisa of Malacha, that we do on Pesach, the first day of Pesach. We're now doing Malacha, Shvisa, so that we could call that Shabbos too, and that's what it's referring to, and so therefore it's, as I said, second day Pesach, 50 days, and then Shavuos comes out. The Tzedaikim during the time of Bayi Sheni said absolutely not. They disagree with it. Okay, so what did they hold? So B'Pashtus, as we're going to see, from many of the sources, or from some of the sources it seems, that we were generally speaking, very close with each other. L'mashal, let's say Pesach was Tuesday. The first day of Pesach was Tuesday, so we would say you start counting 50 from Wednesday. They would say 3 more days, Shabbat, Sunday, right? And let's say first day of Pesach would be Friday, so we would start counting Shabbos, and they would start counting 1 day later. And what happens if the first day of Pesach would be Shabbos? So then we would mamish be on the same thing. We would be happy to do it on Sunday, and then we would all be happy. It would be peace. That year would be Achdus amongst Klal Yisrael. That's the way some of the sources make it sound. What we're going to do is we're going to explore that there may have been another way of looking at this. That's going to become clear through some of these fragments. So first, let me show you how this is generally how it's understood, that we were pretty close. We were pretty close in terms of how we were doing the calendar. And that some years we would even overlap with each other. Where do you see this clearest? In this Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. What does the Mishnah say? But in the beginning, initially, in order to establish the new month, you need to have eyewitness testimony, you see the new moon. So anyone's kosher la'edus, you didn't have to have credentials. But when the sectarians started causing problems, the Chachamim made a special din that we're only going to accept edus from people who were pre-screened. They were pre-screened to be trustworthy, then we accept their edus. This is all the Mishnah says. So it doesn't say who the sectarians are, and it doesn't say how the mess up was. So the Gemara has a brisa and it clarifies. But the brisa says, what type of disruption did the Baitusin make? So here we see that the sectarians were the Baitusin, and what did they make? So say, one time they tried tricking the Chachamim. How did they try tricking the Chachamim? They hired two people, with 400 zuz, and they paid them, and they said, although you didn't see the moon, go issue say testimony that you saw the moon, and like this, today will become Rosh Chodesh. Okay. So now, what was in it? Why are they doing this? Why do they want people to say that a certain day is Rosh Chodesh? So Rashi has this question, like, what are they trying to accomplish? So Rashi says, so Rashi told you what the scenario was. She'ira Yom Shloshim Shal Adar b'Shabbos. Lamed Adar, the 30th day of Adar, was on Shabbos. Last night, Friday night, let's say it's Shabbos afternoon right now. V'loi nira chodesh b'zmanai. The new moon was not seen last night. No one saw the new moon. So therefore, it was not declared as Rosh Chodesh. But v'habaitusin misavin sheyehei Yom Rishon Shal Pesach v'Shabbos. The Baitusin very much want that the national day of Pesach should be Shabbos. Why? So that the lifting, waving of the Omer should happen on Sunday. And then, Atzeres Be'echad B'Shabbos. In their cheshbon, if Hanafas HaOmer is always Sunday, then 50 days later is also always on Sunday. Shavuos is always going to be on Sunday. So they really wanted it to happen. They realized their chance is slipping away. Today is Lamed Adar. If a witness comes right now before Shkia and says he saw the moon last night, so we declare today, right now, instead of being Lamed, will immediately transform into Aleph Nisan. If Aleph Nisan is Shabbos, that means the first day of Pesach is Shabbos, which means Hanafas HaOmer is Sunday, and so then we have it our way. So we really want that. If, however, no Eidos comes, and we make Havdalah, and then you see this, so then it turns out that today is Lamed Adar. Tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh, and so then we're not going to be on the same day, so this is why the Baitusin did it. In other words, Rashi is presenting over here, sometimes one way of reading the Gemara could have been, I don't like your system. So, I don't like your system, I'll try to ruin it. Anything I could do to undermine it. I'll make false witnesses and testimony, and then I'll put an ad in the newspaper and go, ha ha ha. What did I gain? Nothing. I didn't gain anything. But that's one way we could have looked at this thing. But Rashi tells us no. This wasn't about trying to just make fun or anything. It was about bringing their views to Am Yisrael through this scheme. Now Tosfos asks a moedik shayla on this. What do they gain? They're ruining Pesach. In other words, they know that the testimony that is establishing Nisan, including Pesach, is false testimony. So in other words, Pesach is being celebrated on the wrong day, including by them. So that didn't bother them? And for Tosfos, that's not a problem. Why? This is an amazing thing. Tosfos says, Mishum the Darshi, Atem v'afilu mizidim. The pasuk says, Eila Maya de Hashem, Asher Tikru Oisam Mikroi Kodesh. You should call them. The holidays use the word Oisam. In that parsha, it uses the word Oisam 3 times. Chazal Darshan from the extra uses the words Oisam is that you read it as Atem, and Atem means it's all about you guys, Sanhedrin, meaning even if you make a mistake, doesn't matter. Even if you're a shoygig, doesn't matter. And even if you're a mazid, and a bezin sat down, they said, we're angry at God, we want to make a wrong Rosh Chodesh today, if they do it, doesn't matter, it becomes a Rosh Chodesh. That's the Afilu Mizidin. And so the amazing thing Tosfos is saying here is that the Baitusin, who rejected Torah Shabbal Peh, as we know, accepted this drasha or at least the concept that whatever the Bezdin says is kosher, and therefore it wasn't a problem. Pesach is on the wrong day. No, it's not on the wrong day. Once Bezdin declared that this is the day of Rosh Chodesh, and all is good. What do you see from this Rashi and Tosfos? What you see from this Rashi and Tosfos is they're very much in the same. We're sitting on the same car. We're sitting in the same wagon. We're heading in the right direction. We're using the same calendar. And we're not so far off from each other. In fact, Tosfos goes so far as to say that they even agreed with the principle of afilu mizidin. Okay, this is the way, the normal way, the regular way of understanding what the system was. And again, in a year that it would be, that it does fall out like they had here, you would have Achtos amongst all the Yidden. Everyone's doing Pesach the same day. Everyone's doing Shavuos on the same day, and everyone's going to live happily ever after. However, there is a little bit of a problem with this model of things. And this problem expresses itself from a Mishnah. The Mishnah describing Anafas HaOmer has a whole arichis on how it was done. Remember, you have a Seder. The next morning you wake up, it's the first day Pesach, and then Yom Tov's over that night, one day. That night, there was a big trask, a big celebration in cutting the first barley grain. They would go to the first barley grain they would cut that they're going to bring tomorrow to the Beis Hamikdash. It was a big celebration. And here, the Mishnah is describing what the celebration looked like. Zok the Mishnah Menachos. Ketzad hayu oisen. How did they do this ritual? Shluchei Bezdin Yotzim Erev Yom Tov. First, you had messengers of the Sanhedrin going out on Erev Pesach. V'oisen oisei krichis b'mechuber lekarka. They tie up the barley that's connected to the ground. Kadei she'enoich liksa. So when they come, Moisei Yom Tov, it's easy to cut it. And all the cities around come so that it should be a big tararam, a big track. Sounds like they got there before Yom Tov was over. Once Yom Tov is over, so they made Abdallah. So the guy who's going to cut says, Ba Shemesh, has the sun set? It has nightfall. Everyone says, they yell out loud, yes. Ba Shemesh, yes again. Then he goes, Ma Gozu, is this I don't know what the exact, a sickle. Is this a sickle? Ma Gozu, is this a sickle? Then he goes, Kupa Zu, is this a box where he's gonna cut the barley, he's gonna put it in the box. Is this a box? Or, I don't know if the truth is, I don't know if he's saying, is this a box, or he's saying, in this box, it could be that's what it is. With this sickle, with this box, one of the two, doesn't matter. Okay, now, they say, yeah, then what happens is the first day of Pesach is Friday, and tonight is Friday night, so is cutting the Omer Doicha Shabbos? The answer is yes. So, B'Shabbos Omer, if it's Friday night, they say, Shabbos Zu, is it Shabbos now, or on Shabbos? They say, yeah, it's Deicha Shabbos. Shabbos Zero, good. Exar should I cut? And like, sir. Exar should I cut? And like, sir. Shalish, Pamal, Kol, Davar. 3 times each thing. The Mishnah only says 2. They did each thing 3 times. Vehem, and everyone says, hin, yeah. The Kol Kachlama, why? So this already saw last week. What did I show you last week? That the Chachamim, if you want to use the words, they tried sticking it to them. If you want to say it that way, another way of saying it is they wanted to really promote the right way, where they took in order to prove the point that it's full Yoim, could do para aduma, they made the kohen who worked on the para, they made him tamei, put him in a mikveh in order to really prove the point. Same thing here. The kol kach lama, why do we go through this whole elaborate ritual with a lot of people and questions and answers? Mipnei abaytusim, because of the abaytusim. Why? Shayu oimrim, because they say, en tziras ha'omer b'motzei Yom Tov. We say that you don't cut the omer on motzei Yom Tov. Okay, now, there's an issue here. What does it mean? That's not true. According to what we said before, sometimes there's Ksiras Omer b'Motzei Yom Tov, sometimes not. It depends. In other words, what they need is that you should have a Macharas HaShabbos. That's what you need. And in a Kvius, which Rashi and Tosfos helped us understand could happen, where the first day of Pesach is going to be on Shabbos, so Motzei Shabbos is Motzei Yom Tov, and everyone agrees that you cut the Omer then. So what does it mean that they're saying Ein Ksiras Omer Motzei Yom Tov? And in fact, this question is an old one. You already see that the Medrash of Sikta Zutrsa, when he summarized this teaching, he felt that he had to add a whole line to explain what the meaning was here. Look. The way he phrases it, Mipnei Abaytusin, Shahayu Oimrin, they used to say that En Ksiras Omer b'Motzei Yom Tov Shachol Shabbos Liyas Acharav. You don't do cutting of the Omer on a Motzei Yom Tif if Motzei Shabbos is going to be a few days later. Avol Achar Shabbos Bereishis, you need to wait till Shabbos Bereishis. So you see that he's struggling with Shabbos Bereishis, which means the Shabbos, the seventh day of the week. He's struggling here with the word because, again, we're working with an assumption that maybe Motzei Yom Tif, maybe not Motzei Yom Tif. If Pesach falls out on Tuesday, so they're not Motzei Yom Tif. You wait till Sunday, and then you're going to do it. If Pesach falls on a Thursday, then not Motzei Yom Tif. If Pesach falls on Friday night, not Motzei Yom Tif. Okay, fine. But if Pesach falls out of Motzei Shabbos, then they hold Kiddush Omer is Motzei Yom Tif. So this almost sounds like this Mishnah is saying that they never cut the first night of Pesach, no matter what. They never cut, even if the next day is Sunday. So it's another thing that we need to think about. We're leading in a direction here. The first question about Yom Kippur was obviously going to lead into a direction where it looks like they're not celebrating Yom Kippur on the same day, which is why you could end up having the evil Kohen showing up at the Moed Tzedek's home on Yom Kippur in order to have a debate and a discussion. Here it also sounds like they're never cutting the Omer on Motzei Yom Tov. But let's see where this is going to come about. Okay. So one of the other one of the fragments in this big collection is a calendar, and in this calendar it says like this. Go to number 9. It says like this. Here's the text. The image is so fragmented, and some of this is really scholarly guesses in terms of filling in the words that I didn't feel it useful to bring a picture. But you have bays and then 3 lines after. So that's supposed to mean on the 3rd. Be 3, like on the 3rd. In other words, Tuesday. So be Tuesday b'Shabbos, b'Shlishi b'Shabbos, b'nei Mu'uzya haPesach. That's when Pesach is. Be Echad b'Yedaya hanafa Omer. Behei b'Sa'orim haPesach hasheni. Be'alef b'Yeshua Chag hashavuim. This is one of the elements in this text. So what is going on over here? So let's do some background. Today we're used to calling weeks by the Parshas HaShavua. Then they didn't call weeks by Parshas HaShavua. All Jews during Bayis Sheni used the names that we have here. Where are these names coming from? This is coming from the Mishmaris. If you look in Divrei Hayamim, text 10, Divrei Hayamim Aleph, it has over here that David HaMelech divided the Koyanim by Yechalkum Levnei Elazar, Roshim, Leveis Asar, Shisha Asar. David HaMelech divided the Elazar was one of the children of Aaron in his descendants into 16 groups. Ulvnei Samar, the other child of Aaron, into 8 groups. So then, so you have 24. Vayichalkum begoyrolis, and they made a goyrel, elei meila, to see who's going to work first in the year, second in the year. This is a week. You served a week, it's a rotation, then you leave. So vayes hagar alishon leYoyariv. The first one is Yoyariv. Then you have Yedaya. That's a name that we saw in that previous. No, we didn't. Yedaya, then you have Chorim, then you have Se'odim, then you have Malkiah, then you have Miyamin, then you have Akoitz, then you have Aviyah, then you have Yeshua, then you have Yeshchanya, then you have the last one I took out from 10 to 24 is Ma'azyo. These are 24 groups of Kohanim that Divrei Hayamim tells us served in the Beis HaMikdash. And in fact, there is one reference that I know of to Chazal that uses these names as weeks. One reference.
24 weeks in a whole year?
No, so 24 weeks and it's cycled again. Right. And then with the cheshbon of Yomim Tovim, because with the Yomim Tovim, no mishmar worked. It was universal for everyone. I didn't figure to do all the math, but if you do, I don't know, I didn't to do it.
48 plus the Yom Tov.
But the Yomim Tovim weeks is 3 weeks.
Yep. Yeah.
I didn't face it, but somehow it worked out. Okay, so there's a medrash. It's in a few places, but one of them is Psikta de Rav Kana. It's not an easy medrash. Tani Rav Chia says, Sheva Shabbos Tamimois Tiyana. It should be 7 complete weeks. So Emasa Hein Tamimois. When are the weeks complete? So what does it mean? When are the weeks complete? Every year the weeks are complete. You count 7. That's a week. Every year we count 7 weeks. So every year there are 7 complete weeks. But what he means over here is he agrees. Rav Chia agrees that a real complete week is not just 7 days. A real complete week is when it starts on Sunday and it starts on Sunday and goes through Shabbos. That's a real complete week. So when is it a real complete week that starts on Sunday and goes through Shabbos? I'll tell you how. How do you know what kfiyas will enable that to happen? Bisman she'en Yeshua u'Shchanya beineim. When Yeshua and Shchanya are not between them. Are not between them. So between what? What is this talking about? So the Rekeach has a long explanation, but I think visually it will be much easier to understand what he's saying. But all of this, the image that you see on page 3, is based on the Rekeach's explanation of this medrash. So Leslie, I made here a kvios of Rosh Chodesh Nisan falling out on Shabbos. So because Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls out on Shabbos, you start the Mishmar, the new Mishmar starts on Shabbos. So the first one, as we saw on the list, is Yehoyariv. We think that he started Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's Rosh Hashanah LaMalachim, and with the first month, and so that's when he started. So Yehoyariv started that week. Yedaya is the next one. He starts the next week. Now the next week, the first day of Pesach is on Shabbos. So because the first day of Pesach is Shabbos, no Mishmar has claim to that, which is why I wrote Tol HaMishmaros. Okay, so Chorim gets delayed to the next Shabbos, and then Sa'orim to the next Shabbos.
The Mishmar goes through the whole, that all the Mishmar that participate the next week till Chorim?
So my understanding of Yom Tov week is that whoever wanted to come could be there. I don't know what the exact Seder was, but whoever wanted, any of the 24 who wanted to be there had a right to serve during that time. The Mishnah Sukkah speaks about it. Okay, good. Okay, then you have Malkiah, Miyamin, Hakoit, Avia. Okay, now you come to the last two. So look at the last two. Look at Sivan. At Sivan, Hey Sivan is Shabbos. However, so you would think Yeshua is going to be there. He's the next one. But he doesn't. Why? Because the next day is Shavuos. Because the first day is Shavuos, and Shavuos has to be a time that's universal, so his week isn't here. His week, the way that Rekeach says it, is that his week, he starts on Monday of the next week. Okay? So you end up having Kol HaMishmaros on the Shabbos, and on Shavuos, those 2 days, all the Mishmaros are working. Yeshua starts on the 7th, and Shchanya starts at the end of the week on the 12th. So what's Pshat? Does man she'ein Yeshua Shchanya beineim? The Yeshua and Shchanya are both of them are not between Pesach and Shavuos. And this is the only way where you have Yeshua and Shchanya after Shavuos is in this Kviyas. Only in this Kviyas with the Shabbos, because if it would be a different day, then Yehoyariv would have to be the earlier Shabbos, because he needs to be the Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So let's imagine that Rosh Chodesh Nisan was Friday. If Rosh Chodesh Nisan was moved back one day, Yehoyariv has to be the week before, because he needs to be the week of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, starting the Shabbos before. If you move everyone up, Yeshua is before Shavuos. So then you don't have Yeshua and Shchanya after Shavuos. So when do you have a situation in Kviyas where you have complete weeks in the sense that it goes from Sunday to Shabbos? The only way to do that, or the siman, is if Yeshua and Shchanya are at the end. As far as are after Shavuos. As far as I know, this is the only reference to Chazal, but it expresses something that was probably a very common phenomena during the time of Bayis Sheni. That was how you called the weeks. Everyone knew the week of the Mishmaris, but this is one place where it's preserved in this Psikta de Rav Kana. It's also in Vayikra Rabbah.
Is this an accurate feed?
This is, I just gave you the Rekeach when he explains it. He gives this hypothetical, so I put it out on a calendar.
It can happen.
Yeah, why should this Kviyas not happen?
It's this year.
But Shavuos is not on Shabbos, on Sunday. It's Monday, Tuesday. Or is it Sunday, Monday?
This year it's Sunday, Monday.
Okay, but anyway, the calendar that we're using was...
What was the reason they went to Yeshua after Shabbos?
Because Shabbos is the day before Shavuos. Shavuos has to be all the Mishmaros, and the way that Rekeach said it, if Shavuos is all the Mishmaros, so the Shabbos before should also be all the Mishmaros. So it's not unique to Yeshua. So Yeshua is...
Even if Shavuos fell out on Thursday, it would still be the same situation.
No. If Shavuos fell out on a Thursday, then you would have, if you had this just pushed over, you would have Yeshua serving there, and then when Shavuos came, you would have all Mishmaros on that one day or episode. That's how it sounded.
It's not going to be a complete week.
So even now it's not a complete week. Even now it's not. He starts on Monday. Yeah, Enochanam. For the Sukkot and Pesach, it's a complete week. So there, the whole week gets canceled. But for Shavuos, it doesn't look like the whole week gets canceled. Like Kuktos. Okay. So now we can understand that other calendar over there. What's going on over there? What's going on? And I put it on the next page. I made an image of what that calendar was showing us. So what do you see here? They have, what do they have? They tell you that Pesach falls out in the week of Ma'az Yahu. Okay, so what does that mean? That means Yoyariv, rather than starting Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Mazyo is the last one. Mazyo is the last of 24. So they, for their cheshbon, they have Mazyo, the last one. Pesach is where it changes over. From 24 to 1 is not Rosh Chodesh Nisan. From 24 to 1 is over Pesach. Okay, so that's Ha'ara 1. Ha'ara 2, what do you see? They say that Pesach, meaning the 14th, is on the Tuesday of Mazyo. So I put it there. The Tuesday of Mazyo, you have Pesach. Okay, then the end of the week, it begins Yoyariv. Yoyariv begins. They don't have any events in Yoyariv. Not one. They don't mention anything in Yoyariv. What they say is that the next week of Yedaya, the Aleph of Yedaya, you have Hanafas HaOmer. So here you see, clearly Hanafas HaOmer is what day? Macharas HaShabbos. What Macharas HaShabbos? A Sunday. So there you see. But it's not the Sunday, the first Sunday after. It's not the first Sunday after. It is actually 2 Sundays. It's after Achron Shal Pesach, after they had the Mashiach Suda, after they did the whole thing, they brought back the Chametz, and then they did the Hanafas HaOmer on that Sunday. You see that here. So all of a sudden you see, the Mishnah said Pashit, that we could be in the same boat. All of a sudden now you're seeing, the Lav Dafka, we could be in the same boat. If our thing fell out on a Shabbos Sunday, Lav Dafka is going to fit with their Shabbos Sunday, because it looks like they have some sort of other cheshbon over here. Okay, then the continuation of it, I put over here in Chodesh Iyar, but because they said, what did they say? They had the second of Yeshua, Chag Sa'odim, I didn't put there. But on the 5th of Sa'odim, they have Pesach Sheni, so I did that. I put on the week of Sa'odim, on the Thursday, I put the Pesach Sheni over there. Okay. Why do they have it that way?
Wasn't it always supposed to be following after the week following?
The Torah doesn't say anything clear. I don't know why. We're not going to know so much the why. The why basement, it's hard. But it does seem from here that this is what the Torah says, you keep Pesach. Then it says, so what's the Macharas HaShabbos? So they say, Macharas HaShabbos means the 7th day of the week. Which 7th day of the week? So Rashi and Tosfos told us, and we'll come back to Rashi and Tosfos soon. But Rashi and Tosfos told us, when they say it needs to be after the 7th day of the week, it's the first one after Shabbos. Here you're seeing the Lav Dafka, maybe a second one. Yeah. Okay, but the truth is that it really goes further than this, because you have to think yourself, what is this calendar? You need to ask yourself, what is this calendar? They had every year they wrote on a parchment like this. The text doesn't look like a calendar that you have and then you throw it at the end of the year. It looks like a text that has some degree of permanence to it. In other words, we have to be open to the possibility that was not a 1-year calendar. That was something that happened year after year after year. And it's not a crazy thing, because look at the next thing. This comes from a Megillah that's related to Tillim. And at the end of this Megillah related to Tillim, we looked at a piece of it last week. Here, they have in this text, it says like this. They say a story. Vahi David ben Yishai, we spell David this way in Divrei Hayom as well. Chacham va'or ka'or HaShemesh. Interesting. He's wise and radiant like the light of the sun. Sofer v'novai. Okay, it's interesting. Sofer. Divrei Soferim. That's interesting. We see them using that word as well. V'tamim b'kol drachal l'fnei kol v'anasha. Okay. Vayiten loy. There you have the Yud Kei Vav Kei. We spoke about that last time. Ruach nevoina va'oira. Vayichtoi tehillim, and he wrote tehillim. Shloisha salafim v'sheish meis. 3,600 kapitlach, according to them. V'shir l'shoyre l'fnei ha-mizbeach, and a song to sing in front of the mizbeach, ha'leilas hatamid l'chol yom v'yom, l'chol yomei hashana, for every day of the year. Now you want to know, how many days are there in the year? I'll tell you. Arba'a v'shishim u'shleish me'esh. 364. 364. The solar calendar is 365 days a year. The lunar calendar is 354 days a year. Here you have 364. And David HaMelech, we are taught here, made a song for the Karban HaTamid every day of the 364 days of the year. Ula Karban HaShabbos Shnayim v'Chamishim Shir, and for the weekly Karban Tamid, 52 songs, and then for Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, and all the days of Yom Tif and Yom Kippur, another 30. So this is a cheshbon. They're writing here a cheshbon of the songs that they think David HaMelech wrote, and we're seeing over here 364-day calendar. What is a 364-day calendar? It doesn't do anything. Mela 365 represents the solar cycle. That makes a lot of sense. If you want to know the season, if you want to be in tune with summer, winter, spring, so the solar cycle is 365 days, so it makes perfect sense. lunar, 12 lunar cycles is 354 days. So if you want to have a lunar calendar, that makes sense. 364 days is nothing. There is no heavenly phenomena that is 364 days. But 364 days has one big mile. What's the mile that 364 has? It's divisible by 7. What happens if you have a calendar that's divisible by 7? If you have a calendar that's divisible by 7, then your Tes Vav Iyar is going to be on a Sunday. If it's on a Sunday, every single year it's going to be on the same day of the week. That's a big mile. If you want to have a consistency, and you don't like this idea of having Yom Tovim fall out on different days of the week, you have an easy solution. 364-day calendar, you solve both. And what is? It's only one day less than a solar calendar. And after all, the Goyim have a solar calendar, so it's not such a terrible idea to have a solar calendar. So let's take the solar calendar, change it by 1 day, and we incorporate that, and then we are going to be good to go. And you have that here. Huh? Yeah, I don't know. Well, 3 days off in Shayach then, obviously. Only 2 days. But, yeah, this is not the only one. There is another scroll that references a calendar of 364 days. Now, there's a big problem with this. What's the problem? If you keep a 364-day calendar, first of all, how did it work? The way it works is like this. You have all your months of 30 days. All your months of 30 days. That gets you to 360. But there's another thing. Chaser, Malay, and the Tillim at the end of the month. It's so confusing each time what to do. Easy. 30 days every month. Then, so it's 360. What do? Then they would add 4 times a year. They would add 1 day. So 4 months would have a 31st day, and that's your calendar. Now, what's the problem with this? What's the problem?
That wouldn't ruin the 7 divided.
No, it's still 364. No, that's what gets you to 364.
How does that work?
Okay, I'm not. I don't know. We have to bring these guys into a press conference with them.
It's not even. It's not going to sync with the moon.
Oh, so what does this mean? Complete ignoring of the moon. Complete ignoring of the moon, but not ignoring the moon. You're not even gonna have the sun. Why? If you keep this calendar for 100 years, so then your Pesach is going to be in the middle of the winter because each day you're losing a day. Each year you're losing 1 day. So this is a big question, and most people assume that it was a theory that was never put to practice. In other words, it was never implemented. Maybe. In other words, people get paid money to come up with theories about what would have been the solution.
It takes away the whole halacha of that the calendar follows a system in the world.
Correct.
And
how do we say? What do we call a month in Hebrew? Chodesh. What does Chodesh mean? New what? New moon. We call it a yerach. What does a yerach mean? Yerach means a moon. These are 2 words we use for a moon. Why? Because the original Torah calendar is a lunar calendar, right? This is very clear in many different areas. But you have to remember that Jews were weird for having a lunar calendar. It was just a weird thing, because that's not what other people were doing. The solar calendar was more of a normal thing. And this is close to a solar calendar. So you'll see, there was an institution to try to change things. Make things better. And it seems that this was happening over here. So now let's put... So now like this. I told you that... So where do we learn about this? It's the first time we heard about this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So klar, schwarzer weiß in this way, in a sense where you're able to see it in a Hebrew scroll, yeah. But the truth is, we knew about this a little before from an interesting source. Basically, during the time of Bayis Sheni, there were other books that were written by Tzedukim. They also wrote books. They weren't, right? But what happened was, they didn't survive, and because they didn't survive, their books didn't survive. But some of them did survive. Not by Yidden, but some of them survived through non-Jews. So there's a book that was discovered in the 1800s. I don't remember exactly. The 1800s, called the Book of Jubilees in English, Sefer HaYovlim in Hebrew. What's this book? This book was discovered. The Ethiopian Christian church had this book, and by them it was canonized. It was sacred scripture. Christians in other areas of the world no, but they had this, and they said it came back for hundreds of years before. And what was it? It's basically a rewritten Tanakh that's dated to around 100 years before Churban Bayis, rewritten, and it's full of what we would call heresy. It's full of Tzeduki positions in there. And they had this book. So it was translated, and then someone made a Hebrew translation, And if you look at this book, at this thing, you see that they are anti-lunar calendar and they are pro 364 days. So I'm going to show you 3 quotes from that. So in chapter 2:9, it re-paraphrases a very famous pasuk in Bereshis where God says, here's the sun and the moon, and they are going to be la'oisais, I don't remember the exact lashon hapasuk, la'oisais l'moedim v'yamim v'shanim. So there what you have is, this guy was Matayik. And Vayiten Hashem es Hashemesh la'ois gadol al haaretz u'liyamim l'shabbatzes u'liyarachim l'moedim l'shanim. Okay? Only the sun. Only the sun is there to tell time, not the moon. That's number 1. Number 2, then you come to the Mabul. You come to the Mabul, and it says that the water, the water was on the land, Chamisha Chadashim, which was 5 months, which equals 150 days. 5 months, in a Jewish calendar, 5 months wouldn't be that, because you have some Mali, some Chaser. But they have Chamisha Chadashim, Mea v'Chamishim Yom, again showing you his 5 consecutive months of 30 days each, and if I did the math correctly, I think this comes out to this number. Okay. And the third is, they have some sort of angel talking to Noach before Noach dies, and paraphrasing on Sukkim in the Torah, it says, I know that after you die, your children are going to go off the derech. They're not going to do a 364 calendar, and therefore they're going to mess all of that up. Okay, so now what happened? In the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found 15 copies, and this is the only Hebrew of the Hebrew that was completely lost. 15, not full copies, fragments, a pasuk here, a pasuk there, but clearly a pasuk. But it comes from this book of Yovel. So obviously, this Yovelim book was something that the people who were living in that area cared about, and it's no surprise to find that point of view in their writings. And so now go back to that Mishnah when Chazal say that the Baitusim say Ein Ksiras HaOmer b'Motzei Yom Tov. All of a sudden, we could perhaps explore a new possibility of understanding what this line is. Ein Ksiras HaOmer b'Motzei Yom Tov. Never is Ksiras HaOmer b'Motzei Yom Tov. Even if we celebrate the first day of Pesach on a Shabbos, and we are going to do Ksiras HaOmer tonight on Motzei Yom Tov, and tomorrow is Sunday, so they should be good, they are still not going to join us. Ein Ksiras HaOmer b'Motzei Yom Tov. So you have, that's possible. I didn't come up with this idea, just to be clear. I'm not a mechadish like that, but I did hear from others who made this suggestion, which is interesting. And then, it's not so crazy to imagine that, it's very Yom Kippur, but someone who doesn't buy into their system would travel over to them in order to engage in a religious disputation or something like that. Again, vague entirely about what's going on over there, but that's definitely a possibility. However, I don't want to go too far with this. And this comes back to Rashi and Tosfos. I don't want to go too far with this. Why? Because we have to be careful before, when we say a group, and we assume sometimes that this group, everyone in the group, was all following one shitta. It's like, you say an Orthodox Jew. Yeah, Orthodox Jew, but how many variations are there among, right? You have to be very careful of this. So even if you had some Jews, and clearly we did, during Bayis Sheni you had it, I don't think it's up to fact that there was another group that weren't as, these are radicals. These are radicals. They're throwing out the Jewish calendar. They're throwing out the moon. They don't care. They're making a radical change. I don't think that means that it was either that or Chazal. I think it's very possible that you had people who were more moderates, they wanted their Macharas HaShabbos, that was important to them, but they still were within the same category as Chazal, generally speaking, in terms of the calendar. In fact, in some of the Dead Sea Scroll writing, we do see them talking about the moon, and we see them talking about Kiddush HaChodesh. So that's why we have to be careful before we run and say that this was everything, and that this is all the Tzedukim and all the Baitusim. I think what we could say is that amongst the Macharas HaShabbos people, you had multiple groups. One may have been the way Rashi and Tosfos said it. They're within the same, exactly the way Rashi and Tosfos said. They're within the same category, and there's no reason to deny that. At the same time, perhaps we're seeing echoes of the more radical group here in this Mishnah Menachos that says it's Ein Ksiras HaOmer b'Motzei Yom Tov. Okay. So now, let's conclude with some thoughts on the Levana and the Chama, especially as it pertains to this year, given that this year is in Ibriyar. So the Gemara says very famously in Sukkah that when there is a solar eclipse, it's a bad omen for Oivdei Kechavim. And when there's a lunar eclipse, Levana Loika, it's a siman hara l'sainem shel Yisrael. It's a bad omen for the Jews. Sainem shel Yisrael here is a lashon sagi noher. Okay. So without getting into the conversation about why would an eclipse be bad siman, like why is that necessary? We don't need to go there. The point here is the Gemara is presenting solar calendars a goyish hazach. It's a goyish hazach. Jews, we do lunar calendar. In other words, we're associated with the moon. They're associated with the sun. So when there's a solar eclipse, it's bad news for them. When there's a lunar eclipse, it's bad news for us. The Rebbe spoke about this idea that they do the sun and we do the moon many different times. The emes is that we do the moon, but we also do the sun a little. Because if the Muslims follow a complete lunar calendar and where they only have 354 days a year, which is why Ramadan could be any time during the year, because it floats through the calendar, because they don't have the concept of Shana Mubarak. They don't care about the seasons. They don't care about the sun. They don't care about that for their calendar. The Eidach, the Julian and Gregorian calendars, these were complete solar calendars, and they don't have months. January, February are fake months. These aren't real months. It's an artificial division of a year into 12. But we have a lunar calendar, but we're conscious about seasons, and we need Sukkot to be when Sukkot is, and we need Pesach to be when Pesach is. And so, taking into consideration the seasons, every 3-4 years, whatever it is, we do a Shana Mubarak, we add another year. So it is lunar, but with an element of solar. So the Rebbe spoke about these Nekudas, how it relates to our Avodas Hashem. So point number 1, Inyan Zeh, the Rebbe says, Meshakev is Toil Ham Yisrael. First of all, the very fact that we count to the moon, it represents and expresses Jewish history, which is a historia shel shinuim, flux, change, shel galus and geula, exile and redemption, yeridas and aliyas. We fell down and we stood back up. That's the moon. The moon waxes and wanes, and the Jewish people have been in a continuous story of waxing and waning. But in such a way, immediately after the concealment, where there's no moon in the sky, there's a rebirth. With new power and with new or. And we tell Jews that they will be renewed again to be similar to the sun. There's a tradition about the sun, moon becoming equivalent to the sun, which is the Gula. So it's just an interesting thought. The sun doesn't have this message. Resilience. The sun doesn't have that. What's the sun? Static. But then his position is different. But generally,
consistency, efficiency.
Consistency.
That's great.
Well, we'll talk about it in a second. We'll talk about it. Consistency is a meida dikamaila. We'll talk about it. You need to have that. But a yid has the power of resilience. Resilience is, yes, I'm going to get knocked down. And yes, with personal lives, whatever it is. But we stand back up. And that's the story of Jewish history. And that's the message of why, what we learn from the factors, the message of why our calendar is focused lunar. That said, we also have the solar element before, because of the element of consistency. So the Rebbe spoke about this Vos Tishrei Tashim Amdal. A long sikha on this Nekudah. And the Rebbe was talking about education. When you want to educate a child, there are two things you want to give him. And both of them seem to contradict each other. On the one hand, you want to give the child stability, consistency. You want to tell him there's bedrock values that you have, and those are immutable. They're not changing, right? That's that idea of consistency, stability, right? If someone's radically changing every single day what their beliefs are and what their worldview is, then they're not healthy. That's not good.
It's woke.
Okay, I said they're not healthy. So that's a problem. So we want to give our children that yisoid. That's when we give them the sun. But then there's the idea of growth. I want to be better. I want to try more. I want to try harder. I'm not satisfied where I am. You don't get that in sun. Progressive? Progress. I don't know progress. You need to achieve progress. So where do you get that? You get it in the moon. They're opposite chunas. They don't come from the same brain cells. The brain, you know what I mean? They're coming from two different places in terms of your identity. I'm looking to expand, to grow, to evolve, to change. I'm looking for consistency. But both of them are so important for children and for others.
Entrepreneur.
So what is looking for both? Okay, so the Rebbe says that here. So just a small kata from the Sikha. Inyan zeh she's losim degash b'chol inyane avodas adam in all of our inyane of avodah. Hacham inyan echino from education. Al shnei kivunim. We have to go in two directions. Ikviyos, that's consistency. Vishinoi, change. And mudgash gam b'shana zu b'chlal shishnas ibur. And the idea that we need to have both of these, we see especially in this year when it's a shnas ibur. Why? Because Hashem Eshmir Tamid the sun is always in the same way without any change. It's the same on the first and in the Tef of Lachodesh. The moon is different. What's the lesson? Sun is the pasuk says Torah is not changing. That's the constancy of the bedrock values. That's sun. Or I don't lose anything. I get that information. I'm focused on retaining it. Again, consistency and stability. That's the sun. What's the moon? That's Mailam Bakodesh. That's Mayan Amisgaber. I want more knowledge and more knowledge. When we have both of them in 1 year coming together, meaning in the Ibriyar is where we're trying to bring two calendars into alignment. We're trying to bring the lunar and the solar cycles into alignment. So that's about bringing both of these values together into our life. As much as they're different and opposed to each other, that we have to try to live with both at once. They don't have a leap year. Yes, I know they have February 29th or not February 29th, but that's only adding 1 day to the Gregorian calendar. That's not a real... Okay, I don't know why do we use the same word for it, but okay, fine. Ella, the moinin lechama, if you're a Gregorian calendar, you don't have to make your calendar work with anything else. They don't try to bring it in line to the moon. Sorry about the typo. The Muslims, the Rebbe is referring to, those who only follow the moon, they also don't need to bring their calendar into alignment. They don't care about the seasons. Every year, their months are in different seasons. Okay, good. It's like to see him at Rambam. We count to them. We follow a lunar calendar. But still, we consider the solar calendar. So we're the ones who need Shnasa Ibra Lahashas Malach Halavana Lamalach Hachama. So why does a Yid have this? Because a Yid is the one who has to have these. Okay, you say a guy doesn't need it. I guess a guy doesn't need so much. A Yid needs to have these two tnuis constantly on our mind in our educational system, and this is why our calendar is not just something out there. It's actually something that's relevant to how we go about our lives. And the Rebbe then ends off by saying, so what do you see? That in Teva Ha'olam Gufa, you see that a Yid could do both. Why? Why could you see? Because I'm making a Shnas Eber. We're all doing Shnas Eber. So what does it mean we're all doing Shnas Eber? We're bringing into alignment sun and moon. So it's haraya that we could bring into alignment these two educational philosophies and these two ways of life. So maybe, going back to our friends from the Dead Sea Scrolls, maybe they like stability. Maybe they wanted stability. Maybe the idea of growth, La Fashaba, it was not something that they appreciated. And they said, something away with it. But I think a better model is to assume that many of the nations of the world, the Greeks and others who were on the rise at the time, were using solar calendars, and so they figured that this is a religious reform that they should maybe be bringing along into their way of doing this. So this is just another thing we're building on last week. Again, you look at the halachic stuff here. The halachic stuff is Tzeduki 100% every time it comes up. The halachic stuff and all this stuff. Wherever there's an area of disagreement, they're always on the wrong side of history, and that's why they're not here today. And I'll just conclude with one other thing. I was thinking about, someone asked me, what are you doing this? What are you doing these classes? That's a good question. It's good to question yourself. Someone, I remember seeing this video. Someone tells the Rebbe, she's complaining about how we have so many insiders who undermine us Jews. This is Israel-related stuff in 1990. And it's so terrible. Look, we have Yidden, they're destroying us and their views, and what are we going to... And how did the Rebbe comfort her? The Rebbe comforted her by saying that a few days after Matan Torah, you had the people who did a Cheta Egel. And what I was thinking about that is, in our tradition, we never said there weren't dissenters. We never ever said that. from very young age, we learn Mishnah. Yes, we know there was Tzedukim and there was a Chet HaEgan, there was Kairach. We're raised in a culture that there was always dissent. And maybe one of the things that it reminds us is, because look, we're a Kairach's followers today. We're the Chet HaEgan people today. Right? We're these Tzedukim people today. And maybe it's one of the things that reminds us that it's this that has the staying power. So I actually think that it could be, it doesn't have to be, but it could be even inspirational in a sense. You guys want to do more of this, or you're enough?
Yeah.
I have more.
No,
I'm saying next week. You want to go weiter in this sugya?
The table is packed.
Nicest.
The table is packed, so obviously,
Luckily, you have the Agim, they're made and stuff like that. So then you have the lunar. Why are we reconciling with the solar? Meaning what?
You need to have Pesach in the spring. Very simple. It says in the Torah that it's Chedesh HaAviv. It has to be in the spring. It's like this. If you are running 12 months on lunar calendar, what's going to happen is you have 354 days. The solar cycle is 11 days more. So you do that a few times, and then all of a sudden you split back.
Sukkot also needs to be in its time.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically have both themes.
Yeah.
It always needs to be in its time also.
Yeah, in order to have the Shalkasa, yeah. But the test Chazal made is for Nisan.
But the solar system,
Which is why we do an Adar, yeah.
Like the Rebbe's calendar is way more, it's a better calendar.